I get compliments on the audio for my stream all the time. I get told I have a radio voice, I sound like a broadcaster. Lately, I get told often that my audio sounds crisp. And then I finally got asked if I have a tutorial on how I set up my audio, how I get that out of my sound. And when I got asked that, I decided it's time to put one together. And then when I sat down to do that, I quickly realized it's not as simple as I was making it sound. I've learned a lot of little things over the years along the way that I'm drawing on, that I'm putting together to pull this off. And it is difficult to explain that in a way that is simple, but I'm going to try. So I'm going to give this a shot, and I'm going to try to explain my audio setup without throwing too much information at you at one time. Let's start with hardware. And what I'm about to say may surprise some of you, and that is, I am not using an expensive microphone. I am using the Shure PG58. It's the same company that makes the SM7B. It's a $60 microphone. It is Shure's own cheaper knockoff of their SM58. The SM58 is their flagship live performance vocal mic. It's a stage mic. It has been an industry standard in stage mics for decades. It's a $100 microphone. You do not need a $400 microphone to sound good on Twitch. Audio interfaces. I am using the Native Instruments Complete Audio 6 USB audio interface. It's $250. You will find it on sale for $200 often. This is the updated model. Mine doesn't look like this. I actually have the original model. This is not $500. It's only that high because they don't make them anymore. They both do the same thing. If you're going to use a professional stage or studio microphone, you're going to want a decent audio interface to plug them into. But again, you don't have to break the bank to do that. A USB audio interface for a reasonable price is fairly easy to find. Moving on to software. I am using a program called FL Studio. I route all of my vocals through that. It's made by a company called ImageLine. You can find it at image-line.com. Don't panic, it's not $500. That's for the kitchen sink bundle. You don't necessarily need that. FL Studio is a type of software called a digital audio workstation. I use two audio effects that are the key to bringing out my voice and making it sound good. Any digital audio workstation is going to have these two effects, and those are the parametric equalizer and the multiband compressor. All right, WTF is a parametric equalizer. There are probably millions of tutorials out there online about how to use a parametric equalizer and what each knob does and each slider and each button, and I would probably make your head explode if I tried to explain it all to you here. So I'm just going to cover some fundamentals that will help you understand why I'm doing what I'm doing with a parametric equalizer on my voice. Most people have used an equalizer. If you've ever adjusted the bass or treble in your car stereo, that's an equalizer. What a parametric equalizer does is, rather than being locked to high and low, it allows you to select the frequency you want to adjust and also select how many additional frequencies around that one that you want to affect. So you can create a curve that shapes the sound of your audio. So how do we know what frequencies we want to change? Well, to begin, where does the human voice lie? Human voice lies in your mid-range. That's going to be from 100 hertz to 5-6 kilohertz, this area of the graph right here. You don't want to remove much of this, because that's where the real meat of your voice is going to be. Now the lows, the very low lows, are just going to be rumbling. That's great if you want to show off how powerful your subwoofer is in your car as you're driving through the neighborhood. Not great for clarity of speech. So the first thing I do is I apply what's called a high pass filter. And I set that to about 50 hertz. And the reason it's called a high pass filter is because anything over 50 hertz is going to pass through. Anything under 50 hertz is just going to get dropped. You're not going to hear it. By getting rid of that rumbling, I'm giving myself a lot more space to work with the parts of my voice that you can hear. Now, as we've covered, the human voice sits in the mid-range. In the highs live harmonics that shape the sound of what is in the mid-range. So you can adjust the highs. So I apply a small boost with a real soft curve to my highs. And I often get the comment that my audio sounds crisp, my voice sounds crisp. That's probably where that's coming from, is that high-end boost. You don't really hear those highs, but they affect the other frequencies that you do hear. That's bringing out the clarity. And then in the mid-range, I have a couple little notches where I heard some frequencies that I really didn't like. They were kind of unpleasant, so I did a tight notch. How wide this curve is, each little point is called your Q. So I do real small Q and isolate some frequencies. These aren't exact. This is just kind of what the graph looks like in the center on my EQ curve. Two things to remember. If you were to copy this curve verbatim, other than maybe the high pass filter, and apply it to your voice, it would not work for you. And the reason is everybody's voice is different. So record yourself a lot, play it back to yourself a lot, get a good pair of headphones and listen to it carefully, and make little adjustments according to what you hear. You'll hear things that you want to emphasize and hear things that you want to attenuate a little bit. The other thing to realize while you're doing this is don't make huge sweeping curves, huge sweeping changes, because what's going to happen is you're going to make your voice sound artificial. Keep your adjustments subtle, make little changes. If I were to let you hear my voice with and without the parametric equalizer on it, you probably, at first, would not hear much of a difference, if you heard much of a difference at all. Here, let me do that for you. This is my voice without the EQ. This is my voice with the EQ. Again, without the EQ, with the EQ. You shouldn't hear a tremendous difference. You're using this to polish the audio, to bring out the sound of your voice, but not change it into something else. WTF is a multi-band compressor. Well, first of all, what's a compressor? A compressor is a tool that essentially does two things. It takes the quieter parts of your audio and it makes them louder. But your overall audio, it can make quieter so that you get a nice even volume. What that does is, say I accidentally pop my P's, that doesn't blow out your speakers. If I were to yell into the mic, it doesn't get all staticky and scratchy and break up. And if I were to talk quietly, you can still hear what I'm saying. I'm using, on my voice, a multi-band compressor. And all that is a compressor that allows you to apply compression to different ranges of frequencies. So usually high, mid, and low. And in the one that I have up there now, you can see I'm able to adjust where the cutoff for those frequencies are. That's all it's meant by multi-band. It gives you a little more flexibility, a little more control over the compression. The particular one I'm using is called Maximus. Maximus, at its core, is just a really fancy multi-band compressor. There are a lot of neat things it can do, but at the end of the day, that's what it is. It makes it visual, it makes it simpler, so I tend to lean toward it when I need a multi-band compressor. Now, every compressor is going to have an envelope. It's going to have an attack, a sustain, a release, I haven't had to mess with this too much. And this is really getting into the art of compression. That's another thing, like with the parametric equalizer, you'll want to look up another tutorial online about how to understand those and get good at what those are. What I will say is that with speech, words hit hard and fast. You're probably going to want a fairly quick attack. But that's all I'm going to get into there. Now, what some compressors will have is a ratio knob and a knee type, hard, soft knee. The ratio controls the amount of compression that is applied when it crosses a threshold. The knee type controls how aggressively it's applied. A compressor like Maximus combines these two into a graph. Your ratio and knee are controlled by the graph you see in the top left here. Left to right on this graph is the volume of the audio going into the compressor. Bottom to top is the volume that you want that audio to be. And that's where I make most of my changes to shape the sound of my voice. I start with the max loudness preset, because that's originally what I was going for, was just to get my voice loud enough to be heard in the mix. And then, since this is a multi-band compressor, I can start with my low range. With my lows, I would actually boost those a little bit for quiet volumes, because I do want bass in my voice at all times. Those lows are where you get that radio voice feel that some people say that I have. But I don't want it any louder. So I hard limit it so that it can't get any louder than that. I'm going to change this to a hold so that it's a cutoff. So I want the bass loud. I want the lows loud, but no louder. This is an example of a hard knee. It's a hard cutoff at a certain volume. I'm doing a similar thing with the mids, although not quite so aggressive. Ooh, that's what I wanted. Single curve. There we go. And then at the end, doing a soft roll off. The highs, I'm giving them a little bit of a boost with a soft knee, real soft curve. And again, that's probably where you're getting that crispness that people say that the audio in my streams has. Excuse me. And that's it. This is where the magic happens. If you do some homework, learn how to use these two plugins, the better you get with them, these two audio effects. The better you get with them, the more you're going to be able to really bring out the best in your voice live. Unlike the parametric EQ, this effect makes a huge difference on your voice. So let me give you an A/B test. This is my voice without compression. This is my voice with compression. I don't even need to ask if you hear the difference. Without compression, with compression. Lastly, I want to cover routing, and routing is the most complicated and frankly frustrating part of this setup. And I didn't expect to get into it, but I have to because OBS cannot capture FL Studio's output out of the box. We have to give it a little help. And to do that, we have to create essentially a fake audio device to act as a patch cable to connect the two together. And software like that exists. I use a tool from VB Audio Software. You can find it at vb-audio.com. You do not want this first one. You scroll down and find the VB Audio Hi-Fi cable. Download that. And then also, we want to download a tool called the Jack Audio Connection Kit. Now, I'm going to show you how this works for Windows. You can do this on Linux and Mac as well. It's very different for the different platforms, so I'm just going to cover Windows here. Feel free to ask me for more details about how to do it on other platforms, and I'm happy to entertain those questions. But for Windows, download, install those. When you install Jack, make sure that you have QJack control application selected. That's how you're going to visually connect the routes. And this jack router ASIO driver, you're going to need both of those. So, with those installed, you're going to have a new tool called QJack control. Open that. Hit start. You're going to see the center turn green when it starts. If you hit the graph button, it'll bring up your graph that allows you to connect different applications in your system's audio card. We're going to use that in a minute. Also, because we installed the hi-fi cable, you're going to have a new tool called the ASIO bridge. Open that. Make sure that the ASIO device in the center, that you've selected jack router. We're going to need that for FL Studio. And then fire that up. You'll see that appear on your graph. Now, we don't want our system's input. This system on the left is your audio card's inputs, and the one on the right is your audio card's outputs. We don't want those connected directly to the cable. So we're going to delete those routes. All right. Now when we open FL Studio, under Options and Audio Settings, we're going to have jack router as one of the audio devices. Select that. I'm going to create my microphone input in FL Studio. And then I'm going to try to get FL Studio to calm down a bit here. Don't know what's going on with the meters. Go back to your graph in QJack control. We want the sound card to go into FL Studio. We don't want FL Studio going directly back out of the sound card, unless you want to monitor yourself. But generally, we don't want that. We're going to route FL Studio into our virtual cable, into the input end of it. OBS is going to see this virtual cable as a type of microphone. So if you open OBS, you see I already have it added here. I'm going to delete that and start over just to show you how this works. I'm going to add this as a source. You can also do this in settings. There are multiple ways to get audio into OBS. I'm going to create an audio input capture. I'll name it mic. I'm doing microphone through jack. OBS under devices, it's going to see hi-fi cable output. Now, you may have hi-fi cable input in this list. That is not what you want. Because remember what we're trying to do here. Out of FL Studio into the cable, out of the cable into OBS. So we want OBS's input connected to the output end of the cable. Select that and hit OK. Again, FL Studio is freaking out. Don't understand why. Stop. Okay, I think it's calm now. Now oops, I have to reconnect things. Oh, you're getting to see why I call this tedious and frustrating. All right, now you're seeing everything that's coming out of FL Studio is going into OBS, into this audio source. The neat thing about this setup is you can do anything in FL Studio you want now. You can mix music, you can grab audio from other sources, you can create sound effects, and it can all go out through OBS and into your stream. That is my attempt at a high-level overview of my audio setup. I left a lot of specifics and technical jargon out. I'm happy to discuss more details and entertain questions in the comments. I'm also happy to discuss it live on Twitch. You can find my stream at twitch.tv/ObserverHerb, where you'll also find a link to my Discord, where we can have more in-depth discussions there if you wish. So with all that said, take care everyone, and happy streaming.